Well, I'm super excited to talk about Pay Up. The beautiful book right here on the table. A riveting, I tore through it, Reshma, because it's a riveting blend of data and stories that really brings home what's at stake and what we can, strategies for change, how we really make work better for all of us. And I'm super excited to be here. I just feel really lucky because I am a pinch hitter. But in my work with clients, I'm an executive and personal coach based here, and I work mainly with high achievers who, this last couple of years, women primarily, who, this past couple of years have been brutal, right? Maybe a little longer, right?
Yeah.
And I'm always talking to them about how to design their life and to question, and their personal and professional lives, how to have more and less of it, of what they want and what they don't want in their personal and professional lives, and question structures and systems and narratives,
Yep.
right? So we can really make things work better for us. And I'd love to just start there, like what
Yes.
the last couple of years for you have been like, and the driver of, not just the book, but the movement, Marshall Plan for Moms, right?
For me, I think I found myself, in the beginning of the pandemic, 2020, I think we all had very different plans for 2020 than the way that they actually played out. For me, I was running an organization called Girls Who Code, which I had founded. We were going to teach more girls than we had ever had before. I was having my second son via surrogate, so I was really looking forward to being able to take care of him. And then the pandemic hit. And most of my leadership team at Girls Who Code were all working moms. And all of us were just scrambling with our childcare, with our situations. And so a lot of the things that we needed to do got pushed off. And that can be very terrifying, because when you're running a women and girls organization and pandemics hit, it's like, oh my God, mm-hmm. right? Every resource is gone. And so I think seeing it through my eyes and their eyes, mm-hmm. And I think in many ways we became this microcosm for what I think working women were experiencing. And for a lot of us, it was the school closures that really just crushed you, because I think you were kind of piecing it together before September. And then when the school closures happened, you're like, this could be forever. How am I going to do this?
And holding out hope, right?
Yeah.
For that moment of like, where you just have to make it till school starts.
Yeah,
right?
and I think the shock that I really still want someone to do an investigative story about how the decision was made to shut schools down. Because, other decisions were made in other nations. Like in the UK, I was with someone this weekend, they didn't shut the schools down. And because part of when they think about women's labor, it's not a nice to have, it's a must have. And so when you think about, when you think about the decision to shut schools down without really much thought given to the implications of what would happen to women's labor, you realize that women's labor in this country is looked as nice to have, not a must have. And I think that was terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've heard you talk about like the, it's not just like the labor, it's also
the dreams, the hopes, all of it.
More important to have moms be like backup everything too, right?
Yeah, we are this country's backup for everything, for childcare, for schoolwork, for, the domestic work. We've never seen that as work and that having a value. And I think that's why for many of us, part of the exhaustion and the burnout is now almost 3 years in, we've been doing the caretaking work. 2/3 of the caretaking work in the United States is done by women. And we've been showing up, at our full-time jobs. And it's almost like you're living in this movie where like you're experiencing something, but nobody else is actually recognizing that you're experiencing mm-hmm. anything. So you feel crazy. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think that is what is just exhausting. It's interesting. I'm doing a commencement speech in a couple of weeks. I was talking to a friend who, the New York Times just had a story about the anxiety and depression and the rate of suicide for young people today. And the two groups that are having the highest risk of mental health are actually young people and moms. And if you think about, but it's interesting, I think some of the reasons are the same. Right? Well, because I think for young people, it's this sense of like expectations.
Right.
and everybody is putting on, there's so much, you're supposed to just go, be captain of this, be head of this, do this, get a straight A here and there. It's all of this comparison and pressure, right? And this expectation. And I think it's the same thing for moms. It's like we're just expected to be martyrs. We're expected to be self-sacrificing.
Put
We're
more on. Yeah.
more, right? Without either one of these two groups getting able to put their heads up and say, well, what do I want? Like, what do I want to do? And I think that is a very, in the middle of this this pandemic, is a very hard way to live and exist, because you're kind of thinking, like, is this life?
Right. And even in this moment where we're sort of navigating, like, is it over? Is it not over? Come close, get away. We're still stuck in that, like.
Well, it's certainly not over if you're a mom, right? Because we just went through, again, we have a national epidemic in terms of suicides for our children. Like, we have a mental health crisis. So you're a mom. I know for me, like, my little one, he's 7. You know, he's always had a little bit of anxiety, eats his shirt, he like kind of when he sways, when he's a little anxious. So I'm the one who's always thinking about it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And watching him and monitoring him. And so I think a lot of that, it's not because our partners don't care, it's just this is the role that we fill, right? And have always filled, so we will continue to fill it. So you're already, and it's funny because it was, my husband was his 45th birthday this weekend. We brought a bunch of friends, and of course we brought the kids, and so like I was like, okay, I can have one glass of wine, and then I'm gonna leave in 30 minutes because I got to get up. All of it is, your whole life is about navigating choices.
Yeah.
Tetris.
Yeah.
Right between I like this hip hop song that's playing. I would love to stay and hang out with friends I haven't seen in 3 years, but. And so
it doesn't matter what time you go to bed. Right. Kids still get up at whatever time.
Right.
They
And
get
so
up.
right now, even post-pandemic, you're kind of like assessing the landscape of your family to say, who's going to need what am I going to do? Can I take this job? Can I take this responsibility? Should I take this trip? Should I fly on this thing? Like, so, and it's exhausting.
It's more, yeah. Okay. So that's, big driver. Why, right? Things have to change.
Things have changed, and then part of why I wrote the book is the Marshall Plan for Moms was about structure.
Right.
So I think my big aha in the pandemic was like, oh my God, I've been spending the past 10 years telling young girls to climb up the corporate ladder, to lean in real hard, to girl boss their way to the top, and to learn how to code.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you can get to equality. And the reality is that we were never getting to equality because we were always trying to fix the woman and not fix the structure.
Right.
And until we fix the structures, until we redesigned workplaces, until we passed paid leave, until we have affordable childcare, we're going to be running the same race with no gains and no changes. And so that, for me, was a big revelation. And it's a shift. And it's funny, now I'm 4 weeks into my book tour, 10,000 people later, like, it is when I speak to people, like, I'm trying to shift the way we thought in the way that my mind shifted over the past years. And you realize, as you probably do this work as a coach, how hard that is.
Yep.
And really trying to understand what that's about,
I think it's simple, but not easy on a one-to-one, where you say, like, these are your personal levers, right? Like, these are your ways in. These are ways to manage up, manage to lead, right? But it's the invisible stuff, right? Not seeing the systems and the structure that you subscribe to, the socialization piece of it, like all of how big it is, right? Does that make sense? Like the soup we're swimming in.
It's really, no, I think that's right. So you think that we don't, see, I feel like we know it because we talk to our girlfriends about it all the time. In terms of the 3 aspects, let's talk about the 3 aspects of our life, and I think if you're a single mom, you might be missing one, right? But you may have that same type. So you have this dynamic with whoever your coach or caretaker is.
Right.
Right? Of the constant, why am I doing this? Why can't he do more? Why can't she do more? What's happening here, right?
Yep.
That's one. But I think that when you go hang out with your girl, you're very aware of how you feel about the inequality of that situation, right? So that's
True.
or if you're a single mom and it's just like, I cannot believe that, like, how much I'm living in this society that doesn't support this. And I think, the second piece is government, and then the third piece is your workplaces.
Right. I do think we're very aware, and especially when we get into relationship with like...
I think we're the most aware of this first one.
Yes. But I don't think we're fully... I think it takes a while to kind of come on board, at least this is what I've observed.
Yeah,
you know,
tell me.
Is how... It's not just... We get really hung up, I think, on like, well, if he would just think about, you know, like whatever, want to do...
He would just he would just pack the luggage before we were going on a trip.
That would fix it.
Right.
And I think it takes a while to kind of come awake to the idea that like, oh, that's not it. That's not just it.
And what do you think it just is?
Well, it's that everybody is socialized. It's not just like that one task. Like it's not if he just picks up the ball on that one task or picks up the rope or whatever it is. Like it's about like,
we're socialized to play the roles, gender roles we're supposed to play. I think that's right. And I would say for myself, I got married when I was 38, and what I was focused on was I had to find someone that was going to be okay with my ambition and was not going to get intimidated by my big dreams. And so I thought this piece, was not going to be
a thing. Yeah.
When in reality, this is the thing, right?
Right.
But not the thing just for me, but the thing, I mean, thinking not just for him, but for both of us.
Right.
In terms of my own gendered socialization of what I should and shouldn't be doing. You know, for example, Wednesday, I am flying to LA to give a speech, then doing a girls trip in Austin that I had planned for a long time. And then like 2 weeks ago, I get an invite to go to speak at Milken, right? On a panel with like Tiffany Haddish, right? Like, I love her.
Yeah.
And I'm in the middle of a startup, so I'm raising money. Like I'm in the middle of a book thing. Like the answer is like, yeah, go, right?
Yeah.
But I had to go all weekend back and forth. Do I go? Do I not? Now, if it was my partner, he would have gone, and it wasn't him telling me not to go. It was me, feeling the guilt and counting the hours and the days that I'm away and the things and that all of that. And so I feel like that's the thing that
but your ability to trust that if you go, it's going to be fine.
Yeah, and I think that's the piece that like I'm not too worried about. I think, am I going to be fine? Meaning, like, am I going to feel like, yes, and will things fall apart that he'll be calling me all weekend and I won't actually get to like focus on the things I want to focus on?
And I would wonder, and I wonder a little bit like, is there a difference? Like, are things going to be fine? Are you going to be fine? You know what I mean? Like, part of the whole.
Fair.
Part of the whole thing, right? All part of the consideration. Okay, so tell us just a little bit for people who have not torn through the book yet, like what it is.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the premise is that workplaces have not been designed for women. And so part of it is just a historical and a strategic framework on how they can be. So just the history. I mean, the reality is that, you know, since World War II, they never really wanted us in the workplace. We were only allowed to be in because the men were fighting at war and we had to basically fill in. Yeah. And then when they came back, they pushed us out again. And so everything about the design of workplaces, if you think about the fact that workplaces are 9 to 5 and school days are 8 to 3, you know, the fact that they keep, you know, so damn cold, you know what I mean, in those buildings, I mean, happy hour, all of the way that we think about and we structure work is for a model where it was a guy that probably had a stay-at-home partner that could take care of the kids. And so, and we as women, I think, and people of color, I think we're basically, the tax that we paid to be able to participate in the workplace was hiding this other identity that we had. So you didn't put pictures of your kids up at work. You didn't say, I gotta leave and go to a doctor. You apologized. You put networking lunch instead of a dentist appointment. Like, we basically just, you know, we pretended we didn't have this other thing because we knew that if we did, that we would, quote, be discriminated against. And we are discriminated against, as I talk about later, in terms of the pay gap and why it exists. So I think that was just in all of the images that we have in culture of what it means to be, you know what I mean, what it means to work, what it means to be a mom, a bad mom, a good mom. All of it is really, so you know, taking people kind of through the historical, you know, I mean, we talk about one of the funniest things that, you know, I talk about Adam Smith. You know, Adam Smith wrote his book while he was living at his mama's house and she was cooking him dinner, right? Even that, such an iconic piece of economic thought about capitalism was only able to be put into existence because of the caretaking work done by women, i.e. his mother. And so it's always been, this has always been the story. And so now we have, though, been tricked because of corporate feminism to say, in this kind of girl boss lean in era that, don't look over there. Like, actually, if you're not getting to the top, if you're exhausted, it's because you're not leaning in hard enough. You don't have confidence. You need to do your power pose before you walk into your meeting. Every single piece of literature that is written out there over the past 30 years is all about fixing ourselves.
Right.
And so when you don't get there, you think that, something's wrong with me. And so I think that we have to literally have to rewrite the way that we've been doing women's empowerment and throw it in the garbage.
Yeah. That part of the book is amazing. It really lays it clear. I'm got curious about, like, why aren't women wanted? Like, we add so much value, right? Why do you think that hasn't changed? Once we showed up and, like, we're like...
Well, I don't think it's women, and this is the other big thing I think we have to be, like, talk about it. It's like, and be specific about it. It's not women, it's mothers. So, a recent study came out that women are actually making more in, single women without children are making more in 22 states. This is the other, I don't know if you've seen the litany of articles that have been coming out over the past week about, this whole thing about COVID and women is bullshit, that there weren't women being pushed out, but it's not true. It's mothers were being pushed out. Women, right? So, like, I'll talk to a CEO and they'll like, it's just really great at my company. We just haven't, and I'm saying, well, actually, we haven't had this, women have returned. I was like, well, which women?
Right.
So, I think we have to be very intentional about who we're talking about and whether we're talking about gender.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. But I think I've had this big reveal too. And the pay gap is a wonderful example of this. And talk about this in the book. The pay gap is not between men and women. The pay gap is between mothers and fathers. So when you see this iconic women's soccer team going to the White House and basically getting that extra 2 cents or 5 cents or 10 cents, that is not the typical example of where the pay gap exists. In every country, the pay gap exists because once you become a mother, we start penalizing you. So when you leave the workforce, you lose 40. So you have a child, you take maternity leave, right? You return back, you may come back, or you may leave your employer because you didn't have the same situation. You go somewhere else. You are going in with 40% less of the salary that you were making here, right? So you never catch up. For forever, companies just had algorithms that if you had any gap, which a lot of caretakers have a gap, they would just spit your resume out. So you've never been, so the pay gap is between, basically the largest pay gap is between mothers and childless women. But we don't talk about it properly because, we don't talk about it properly because, I don't know, we hate moms. I don't know. Like,
that's my wondering. Like, you would...
I don't know. I feel like I'm a pretty smart person. How did I not know this until I wrote this? You know what I'm saying? Like, how have I been going over how have I not recognized the clarity of what we should be talking about?
And the thing we've been hearing about, I think, for at least a year is how we can't fill jobs.
Yeah.
Right? And so you'd think we'd be like, qualified workers come back.
Well, then the question is then we have to say, well, why are we not, again, like, is it a nice to have or is it a must have? So when it's a must have, if you're like, I must, 86% of women will be mothers at some point of when they participate in the labor force. So we are the majority of, quote, women. But the game that we're playing is we let you come in when you have a kid, we push you out. Then when we have a new batch of people come in, then we have a kid, you push out. And then when we push you out, all those women, instead of going back to the jobs they were having, they become consultants, they become part-time workers, they downshift their career. So they're still in the labor force. They're not in the labor force in the same way. So really talking about specificity about that. The other part of this is that people then often say to me, well, what about the dads, Reshma? Why Marshall Plan for Moms? Why not? Isn't this really about caretaking? That's the wrong word too, because we don't have a problem with caretakers. I mean, when Joe leaves work to go take care of his kids and takes them to the basketball team, we're like, you are such a great
the best dad.
God.
Yeah.
When we see, right? Like we're not mad at him for a single dad. In fact, everybody will try to make, what do you need? can I carry your bags? You know what I mean? Like, let me take care of her for a minute, right? There's something in our, again, American society where we see the woman doing the caretaking work that causes disrespect. And this is why nursing, home care work, caregiving work, 90% of the people working in that field are women.
Right.
Because men rather take unemployment than do one of those open jobs.
Right.
What does that say?
That culturally there's something seriously broken, right?
Yeah.
About how we think about it. Because, right, like 50 years past second wave, it's been the start of like second wave feminism, and it's like it's not working, right?
No, we're nowhere close.
And the pandemic really revealed that, right?
And the other devastating piece about this is, and I forget this, someone reminded me the other day, 51% of college graduates are women. 72% of high school valedictorians are women. The majority of those getting their PhDs, their master's degrees, they're all women. And this hasn't been happening since 5 years. This has been happening for the past 30, 40 years. So if we were living in the American traditional meritocracy, we wouldn't have this problem.
Right.
So it's not, and then this goes connecting it back to this sense of like fixing the woman. Then why is all of women's empowerment about giving you more skills?
Right.
And when we've already walked in at the highest level. Right? It's really interesting to take a step back and say, well, when did that cottage industry start?
Yeah.
Like, when did we start getting told that we're not qualified enough, we're not prepared enough, when we were the valedictorians?
Right. And even those valedictorians won't put themselves forward for a job if they're missing like one teeny tiny thing, right? So there's something really, really broken about that. Okay, so we know what it is. Right? What do we do about it? Like, how do we? So you lay it out, pretty practically.
Yeah.
Like, and on a big scale.
I mean, I think we have a once in a lifetime. I mean, look, we're in the middle of the Great Resignation still.
Right.
There's 4 million open jobs. We have a lot of leverage, and then we're seeing the power of that leverage with young women, childless women, and their salary increases that are happening, and the fact that in 22 states are finally making more than men. So that means young women are walking in right now and be like, yep, nope, I would like 30% more, and I'd like your corner office, please. Right? So they've learned the power of leverage to ask for what they want in terms of cash benefits. So I think that this is the opportunity for us as working moms to say, what do I need? So I think what I need affordable childcare. So much of the decision in like, do I take this job, do I not take this job, is that childcare is so damn expensive. Most people pay more for their childcare than they pay for their mortgage. So if your company started subsidizing or offering childcare benefits, that would really help working moms stay in the workforce. Paid leave. We're the only industrialized nation that doesn't offer paid leave. That is insane.
Yeah.
Like, we should all feel like this is like, it's disgusting.
And easily chopped, right?
87% of women go to work after giving birth, 10 days after giving birth.
Right.
Think about how inhumane that is.
Right.
Right? And what that does to your psyche and your mental health and all of that. So, not to mention what it does to the child. So, that is something that, again, until government can grow a heart, like, companies have to start providing that benefit.
Right.
And then, listen, I think it's crazy that we're in this middle of this conversation in terms of return to work still. That 2 years after the pandemic, even though people have shown that they're able to be productive, not in the office 5 days a week.
More productive.
Right. And that we also know that going back to 9 to 5 versus 8 to 3, that like working moms that are doing the caregiving work need flexibility and predictability. And that why are we fighting that?
I don't know.
Why are we fighting that still?
Right.
And like that has to change.
Yeah. So how do we get organizations to do it? Like big, like not just, I mean, I understand one by one how it can happen, but like.
So I think there's I think the way that we've been thinking about this at Marshall Plan is like a two-way strategy. So one, I think you need to make companies make seismic shift and change. So the thing that we're building a national business coalition on childcare that we're launching in a couple of weeks to start getting companies to raise their hand and say, we're going to start providing childcare benefits. And we've, we released a couple of weeks, but I'm very excited about the traction that we've made there. I think the other piece is you have to start, and this is the thing that I'm struggling a lot more with in terms of like the strategy around it is like you have to start building that muscle that working women have in the workforce to start asking for things.
Right.
And so once you become a mom, you were so used to like breastfeeding in closets, not asking for it, like not having agency or control, having to feel like we had to pick between having a child and that it's so deeply baked that it's like, how do you start actually teaching working women to say, here's how you're going to ask for childcare. Here's how you're going to ask for here's how you ask for flexibility, and actually start building power.
Right.
I mean, the reality is that it's shocking to me that we just went through the pandemic. It's not shocking, right? We went through the pandemic, but we bailed out airlines, but we didn't bail out moms.
Right.
Like, in this moment, we have the presidency, we have Congress, got it all.
Right.
But we can't pass support for women. And not to mention our reproductive rights are being attacked.
Right.
So it's like, we're in this, like, women are in this very, really massive crisis point. That, like, and we need to pay attention to it, like deep attention to it, and then we need to drive change. And I think we were just saying this, I mean, it's hard because, like, I mean, I'm so tired, like, we're all so exhausted that, like, it's not that moment, right, where you're like, but we need to, and we need to be able to do that. We need to have our own. This is the next feminist wave, and it looks very different than the last ones.
Right. And so so who are the people, like, I don't know, I'm thinking about levers, partners, you know, like how you really make it, how you get women, exhausted mothers, right, to rally for the moment. Because I agree with you, like, it does feel like a really once in a, what I always say, like,
well, I mean, listen, I think the fact that we have organizations about mothers was a shockingly a controversial thing.
Yeah.
And so it's happening. I think it's happening. I think that we have to keep pushing it and asking ourselves you're doing this, you know, in an individual basis. But if you were to think about coaching 1 million women,
right,
or, you know, what would you reteach them? So, like, for me, when I had thought about this conversation 10 years ago for girls, I was like, well, what's preventing girls from coding? Well, I did really felt like it was linked to bravery and perfection, right? We were so need to be perfectionists that learning coding languages is about iteration and failure. So if you could undo perfectionism, you could actually get, and it works. So I think what I'm trying to do here is think about what is the thing for moms that is going to unlock their sense. And I've been thinking a lot about this word permission.
Yeah.
You know, because I think that so much of this is about, well, we don't have permission. We don't give ourselves permission. We don't have permission from our partners, our families, our kids, our employers, you know, because we act as if we don't know how to do this.
Right.
Like, as you said, like, once you give people agency, they're like, oh, okay. Like,
right.
And
right.
everything's shifted.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think about it. I mean, this is definitely work that I do one-to-one and with their teams, and help them, like, lead and, like, think bigger and what more is possible. But I'm like, how do we reach them all? How do we galvanize them, right? I mean, we saw so much activism in I think from this demo, right? Like, really 2016, really
it's
rising
happening.
up. Okay.
It's right there.
Yeah.
It's right there. I think, though, like, sometimes we feel, like, even if you think about, you know, if you think about the Women's March, that was coming. If you think about Black Lives Matter, that was coming.
Yeah, that's right.
And so here, this has been coming, and then you have this precipice moment where I think now there's a lot of these conversations that are happening now, and that will then be ignited. But it's not clear to me that we need a march.
Right.
Or, you know, what is clear to me is, like, we have to start. And the other thing is like, there are France, Germany, Swedes. Like, I'm not talking, I think part of what I'm saying, I'm like, listen, I'm not talking about a fantasy here.
Right.
This exists. We're not talking about a utopia.
Right.
Right? So I think part of this is not about, it's like the revolution looks different.
Right.
And part of the revolution, or part of the new resistance, is the resistance to going back to the old workplace.
The way it was, right.
That, to me, is the key. It's not even Washington. It is about not going back to the old workplace.
Right.
Which we have agency over. Because if we all said we're not going to work,
like in Iceland. Yeah, like Iceland did.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I think, I mean, so.
How do you do that?
How do you do that, right?
And I think you do it company at a time, woman at a time, person at a time, where it just happens. An example of this is IVF. 5 years ago, 3 companies paid for IVF, egg freezing. It was not a thing. But women started going in and saying, what's your fertility benefit? Right. What's your fertility benefits? Right. And men did too.
Right.
And suddenly it shifted. So things can shift overnight.
Yeah.
It can. It's like, it's right there. And we actually just experienced it for the past 2 years.
Yeah. True. Right. Were you giving us a time? Time for questions?
Yeah. We have 10 more minutes.
Oh, we have 10 more minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Like, what's happening? What do the hand signals mean?
Does anyone questions?
I'm sorry, is it 10 more minutes of chatting or 10 more minutes, period? Period. Oh, so we have time for, that's cool. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, I have many more questions about what we do and like big and small actions, but I bet other people do too. So I'm curious. No, Rachel's got her hand up.
Anything, in my experience, anything that has mom attached to it automatically is put in the nobody else's problem category.
Right.
How do we engage allies and the other half of child creation to uplift this?
So it's so funny, Rachel. I feel like as I've been doing this work, they're not the problem. Like, they're on board. I really do. Meaning, I think the part of it is what we started talking about before. It's the cultural piece. It's the gendered expectations of what men think they should do. And so I think we have to start shining the light on companies that literally gaslight men when they want to take time off to when their child is born, or so many men are quitting because they don't want to they don't want to commute because they don't want to see their kid for an hour a day. So I think it is really the culture. I think we need to, again, I walk up with the assumption of they are on board and be like, you are on board, and what are we doing together, rather than feel like they're the problem. So I don't think that as I've been doing this work, I'm like, oh, you're not the problem.
It's like a company can have a paid leave program, but if men aren't taking it in equal measure, right? They're
not taking it because because there's the motherhood penalty. They see what happens to their colleagues who take maternity leave, how everybody talks about her and takes things away from her. And they're like, why would I go do that?
Right.
I just talked to a guy and did a podcast there, and he said, and also I think we have this sense that men are the providers, which is why I feel like in many ways we build a model for literally a single mom. Mm-hmm. Workplaces should be designed for the most vulnerable, the person who needs the most amount of support. And I think, getting men on board is about mandating paid leave, tying it to performance reviews, really shifting how we think about this so it is an expectation. And then I think the other piece of the allies that have to get on board, I also think, are childless women. For a lot of women there have been women said to me, why should I pay for your childcare? And not just childless women, childless people.
Right.
And I think recognizing that we do live in a society now where we have the lowest birth rate in the past 50 years, that is deeply problematic.
I think also, we've never been encouraged to bring, and I think this does happen in other countries, to bring our whole self to work too. And so then if someone has to peel off to meet child care end of day, there's at least I've definitely worked in those organizations where there was
Totally. I mean, even in I get into fights at restaurants now all the time because we bring our kids. We're like Indian. We bring our kids everywhere, and they'll be like, the kids will have their iPad. People will roll their eyes and you make a comment to the waiter, and then I always fight back now. Before I'd be like, I'm sorry, hey kids, be quiet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when you go to Europe or India, it's not like that. People, you have it's part of. They're not hidden things.
Right.
It's part of the way that we live and work.
You bring your whole person to
so
your
we
whole
have to change that. Right. We really have to and that's what makes this very hard, because it's deeply cultural.
Right. It is. I never forget. My pediatrician, my son's pediatrician. He's going to be 23, but I was going on a flight, and she said to me, and I said, like, what do I do? I'm terrified. And I was a single mom.
Yeah.
And she was like, everybody was a baby once. Everybody was a crying baby on a plane once, and so I just never thought like never. Yeah. But it was like I had that gift of like just like that different message of, and so I think you're right. It takes one by one changing our own mindset about that. And yeah.
What's our next like actionable step? Because now I feel ready and like.
Yeah. So I want everyone to think about.
I'm just repeating for the mic.
Oh yeah.
Next actionable step.
So everyone, read this book, Pay Up, and I want you to all think about one thing that you're going to do to advocate for yourself. One thing, and like literally practice it, and then do it, and then like pass it on.
Yeah, I love that. And get support with it because it can be super, right? Like,
yeah, and just recognize we're all in this once in a lifetime moment where. Right. We can go. They will push us back to the old normal. And it's not just for all; it's for everybody. And I think we have an opportunity to really fight it.
I think that's the lens shift that I think is really important too, which is it's not just a benefit to moms.
No, it's a benefit. You always build. When I built Girls Who Code, I went to the poorest communities and refugee camps. And I said, if I can teach a girl here to code, I can teach anyone to code.
That's right.
And it's the same thing with workplaces. But we've designed workplaces for a man who has a stay-at-home partner.
Right.
Instead of designing it for a single mom of color, right? Our most vulnerable in our community,
right,
in terms of work.
Right. And when we lift up the most vulnerable, everybody benefits.
Yeah,
that's
totally.
right. That's right. Any other questions before we wrap up?
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks
for this
Reshma.
conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's give one more round of applause for these two.
Thank you. Do your earrings say pay up?
Thank you.
They're amazing.
I feel like ready to go. Read this book. It's sold $10 at the front desk if you want a copy of your own. And definitely read it and get out there and change the world. Again, we have Reshma Saujani, the founder of Girls Who Code and author of Pay Up, the Future of Women and Work. And then it was moderated by Shoshanna Hecht, executive.
I've been coaching exclusively probably about 7 years, but I have a social work degree, another degree that is family women heavy.
Thanks.
And I have a license as a therapist in Cal State.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, hopefully I have your email now, so stay in touch.
Yeah, we're both listers.
Yeah.
That's how I grab your email. I want to sign copy, Raj. Do you have a minute to sign?
Yeah.
And can we take a picture with you?
Oh, yes.
Because the light from behind and my angle is too much, so let's get close.